Greetings, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today to AARP Indiana's fourth and final virtual event in the Longevity at Home series called Declutter Your Life. I'm Addison Pollock. I'm the Director of Community Engagement, and today's program is part of a collaboration with Swerka & More, intended to connect Hoosiers with more information and resources that can help them live and age where they want to be, in their homes and communities. This virtual event series is one of many ways AARP Indiana and our teams of volunteers draw attention to and advocate on social change issues that continually improve the quality of life for people 50 years and older and their families. Today, we'll learn about all things home decluttering. We'll touch on downsizing, organizing, and tips and tricks of letting go of stuff. I'm pleased to welcome our special guest speaker, Amy Payne, the owner of Lasting Order, LLC. Amy is a certified professional organizer and launched Lasting Order in 2011 with the goal of helping people live their one and only lives with purpose and intention. Her organizing firm helps people clear the clutter at home and work, and Amy's favorite part of her organizing firm is watching the client's reaction when they go from cluttered and overwhelmed to finally experiencing freedom and peace. And I'm hoping that all of our viewers will experience a little bit of freedom and peace after watching today's program. Before I hand the microphone over to Amy, I want to remind everyone that you can submit questions in the comment section at any time if you're viewing this live, and we'll do our best to answer those at the end of the program. Well, with that, I now want to turn it over to Amy to give her presentation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Addison. I'm so happy to be here today. I love organizing and all things decluttering, so I'm happy to share today. Like he said, please put questions in. I love answering specific questions from people as well. Slide. Let's get this rolling. All right. So we're talking today, obviously, declutter your life at home. Slide. Our objectives today are to explore why organizing is essential to aging in place, to learn an organized process for decluttering. That organized process can be used with any organizing project that you have at home, at work. It's a process that can be just applied to anything. Discuss tough issues related to downsizing, and then start creating an action plan for getting your life decluttered. Slide. What are some causes of disorganization? We all know we see messes, we live in messes at times. There are a lot of different causes. So there's two different types of disorganization that we deal with. One of them is situational. Situational disorganization is typically when someone has a baby, they move, they get a divorce, someone passes away. There's just certain circumstances in which your space can get super disorganized. The second situation would be chronic disorganization. Chronic disorganization is when you just don't have the skills to get organized. Maybe you weren't taught them growing up, or the situation is you have tried to get organized and just struggle. You've really had a hard time for whatever reason that is. Maybe you have hoarding tendencies or struggle with things like ADHD or have physical ailments, energy issues, lots of different reasons why you might be chronically disorganized. There are other causes of disorganization as well, like you've lived in the same place for a really long time. When you live in the same place, you tend to accumulate stuff. And unless you're regularly and intentionally decluttering, you're going to have spaces in your home that are disorganized. Like you dig in a closet and you're like, wow, I don't even recognize the vacuum at the back of this closet. That has actually happened while I was on a client job. Sometimes you're disorganized because you've inherited stuff from other people, or you've had adult children move out and they didn't take all of their stuff with them. So you end up with belongings that belong to someone else that now are in your space, and you're having to deal with that as well. And like I said, physical and mental ailments can add to disorganization as well. One of the things that I try to focus on when I'm working with people is positive self-talk. It doesn't matter how it got disorganized. We're here to help it get organized and help you learn how to keep it organized. So don't feel bad if any of those situations describe you, or if the photo looks like your house. Don't feel bad. Today is not designed to make you feel guilty about what your space looks like. It's designed to inspire you and help you want to get your space decluttered and feel better about your life. Slide. So why age in place? A lot of people are choosing to stay at home longer now. And I think that's fantastic. There's a time and a place for retirement living, assisted living, all the different situations like that. But there's also people who want to stay home. A lot of people want to stay home because they want the freedom. They want to be able to make their own choices, live on their own schedule, travel, do all the things they want to do. Some people want to age in place for health and safety reasons. They, especially in times like COVID, they want to stay in their own space with their own germs instead of being in a different place with other people's germs. Financial reasons, people prefer to stay in their own home if their home is paid for, etc. Slide. So if you're going to age in place and you're going to stay home longer, which more and more people do, getting organized is essential. It is absolutely necessary for you to stay in your space. You may get to a point where your health and safety are being hindered because of the clutter in your space. We run into situations where clients have issues with dust and cleanliness because they're physically not able to clean their spaces like they did before. They're not able to lift boxes and move things, so it becomes a fall hazard. They're unable to navigate their space because clutter has begun to fill the space to the point that it really becomes unsafe. So that's one reason why getting organized is essential. Another one is for memory issues. Not even if you have memory issues, but just for yourself to be able to know where everything is that you own. But then as you start to potentially lose your memory, it helps to have consistent routines. You have a home where you've kept certain items for long enough that you're able to go back and find those items, where when your environment changes frequently, it makes it tough to remember where things are. When you have caregivers coming into the home, it's important that things are organized so they can find what they're looking for and be able to take care of you instead of running around trying to find stuff all the time and not paying attention to you. And then you're able to relax. I love this picture of the coconut island. It just makes me feel relaxed and like I'm on vacation. And that's what we want you to feel like in your own home, where you can relax. You know that everything is planned out, taken care of. You've got good routines. You know where your stuff is. Your caregivers can find things. Your financials are taken care of. The paperwork's in order. And it's time to just enjoy your life instead of stressing out about all the clutter and all the things going on in your life. Now, that relaxation, that island feeling sounds fantastic, right? Is decluttering itself fun? Not necessarily. A lot of people find getting organized and decluttering super stressful, especially if you're even considering moving. It can be a very stressful process. But I will tell you, the more support you have, the more knowledge you have, and the more organized you are throughout the process, the more your stress will be reduced. So now we're going to talk about our 10-step process for decluttering. Slide. Go ahead and go to the next slide as well. So step one, this again, to repeat, this is a 10-step process that you can repeat for each project or each area that you're organizing and decluttering. So I want you to think about right now, if a stranger came into your home and they walked in the front door and they took a tour of every space in your home, are there areas that you would be stressed out about them seeing, or you would be embarrassed, or you would wish you could crawl under a rock or into a hole? Those are the areas that I want you to really concentrate on today. As I'm talking through this process, I want you to envision a specific space or a specific project that you have in your own home. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to find purpose. What are you trying to accomplish? Why are you even on this? Why are you attending this event today, right? There has to be a reason. What are you hoping to get out of getting organized? What's your why? Are you looking to have a safer environment? Are you looking to have a home for everything that you own so caregivers can come in and help you? Are you looking to Make sure no one can take advantage of you because you've documented what you own. You have your paperwork and your financial stuff in order, and you know where it is, and it's being shared with someone that you trust. Are you looking to retain control over your environment and you don't want other people to be going through your stuff after you're gone? That's what a lot of people that call us do. They're like, I want to go through my own stuff now. I don't want my kids or my grandkids to have to go through my personal effects, all of my paperwork. I want to go through it now and get things pared down to what I really want in my life. So purpose. Think about what you're trying to accomplish. What's your why? And I want you to hold on to that through the process, because if you can remember why you're doing it, you're more likely to actually finish the project. If you get distracted and you've forgotten why did you even start this to begin with, you're very likely to just walk away and avoid, right? That's what most people do when they have an area that's frustrating, they're overwhelmed, they don't know where to start. What do? You close the door and you go watch Netflix, or you go shopping, right? I hate to break it to you, but shopping has never cured a clutter problem. So people like to shop. It makes them feel better about their life, but it does not fix the clutter. So find purpose. Second thing, create a plan. So I want you to plan ahead. Think about, again, what is your goal? What are you trying to accomplish with this project? And then what is your long-term plan? If you're wanting to age in place for now, that's great. Hopefully you can live the rest of your life in your space. But what happens after you pass away, or what happens when the time comes for you to move on to retirement or assisted living, or a nursing home? What happens at that point? So think about also, if you have health issues that are degenerative, what happens as you start to lose more and more sight or lose some physical mobility? Create a plan now before you get into that situation, and you're going to be more likely to be at home longer. Stress and fatigue really impact memory and decision making. So it's good if you can create a plan around when are you going to work on the project? What's the best time of day for you to declutter and make decisions? And then don't wait until the process is even more difficult. The harder and harder it is to start the project and start the process, it's going to be too late. Once you've already been forced into making a decision about changing your living circumstances and you're unable to make decisions on your own, it's too late. One of my clients called, she was in her 80s, and she said, I have a neighbor who was around 95 years old. She lived in her home until she passed away, and she must have been super cluttered because I keep seeing her children go in and out and in and out and in and out of her house trying to clear out the space once she had already passed. So this lady is like, I don't want that. I don't want my kids going through all my stuff. I don't want them to have to spend days and weeks and months clearing out my space. So she brought us in to help clear out the space at that time while she was still able to make the decisions on her own. So part of creating a plan, next slide, is pre-deciding. What are you going to do with the items that you're decluttering? Are you going to sell them? Are you going to arrange for an auction? Are you going to take things to a consignment store, sell them on social media, Facebook Marketplace? What are you throwing away? What are you going to recycle, donate? What are you keeping? So pre-deciding what's happening to the items that are leaving your space is really important. Because if you get halfway through the process and you've already donated everything, and then all of a sudden you realize, I probably should have done an estate sale. Guess what? You can't get the items back. Or if you know that you want to do an auction, that can simplify the process for you, because maybe you don't need to be as detailed in going through. The auction company will be able to come in and help you figure out some of that stuff. Also know, what are you planning to give to other people? What is important to other members of your household? You may have 40 good years of your life left, but it's never too late to start the process of thinking about what's going to happen to this item when I no longer want it. And then you can mark underneath furniture, on the back side of it, you can mark which stuff is going to who, or keep a little notebook of, this granddaughter said she really loved that necklace. Different things that you might want to give to people in your family. So pre-decide what's going to happen to the stuff and create a plan of how you're going to tackle the project, whether you tackle it on your own, enlist the help of a professional, or enlist the help of friends and family. Next slide. So again, first step, think about what the purpose is, then create a plan. And then the third step is to start sorting and categorizing. So start pulling things out of closets. It's up to you how you want to tackle this project. If you want to start in the attic, work your way to the basement. If you want to start in the areas that you live most frequently, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Pick a place and start. What we typically recommend is you start with things that are the least frequently used. So things stored in the attic, the basement, off-season decorations for holidays, clothes for the off-season. If you have a spare bedroom and each drawer of the dresser is full under the bed and the closet, that's a great place to start too. Things like china or things that maybe you don't use anymore that back in the day were very useful or helpful, and now you just don't host family gatherings anymore, that's a great place to start. It helps to start with things you're not emotionally attached to and work your way into the things that are personal to you, that you care about, that are emotionally attached to, and then the things that you use daily are a little bit harder to get into. So start with the easier stuff. And then think about, as you're pulling things out, like maybe you want to do by category. You pull out all your clothing instead of by room. So you pull out all your clothing and you sort it. You put like items together. We had a client once that until we came in and organized her clothes, she had no idea she had 15 black tank tops. 15. A lot of them were almost identical, but until she sorted it, she had no idea that she had that many. So once you've gotten those items sorted, then you can start making decisions. So start sorting, think about where you're using items. So maybe scissors or something, maybe you want multiple of them and you want one in each room or one in a couple of different places. But clothing is something you want to try to fit everything into just the master closet. So think about where are you using the item, and then be systematic about how you're approaching the project so that you know that you have touched every single item in your home. And that sounds like a giant goal for some of you, right? You're like, oh my gosh, I have a 5-bedroom house and I've lived here for 40 years. That's a huge goal. But if you break it down and you're systematic, it will make the process a whole lot easier. One thing is, if we're tackling a room and we're just looking at it like, wow, there's a mountain of stuff and we don't even know where to start, we usually start to the left of the doorway and just work our way all the way around the room. Every surface, every box, every container, every drawer, every closet, every cabinet. Because people will say, oh, I know what's in that bin. It's all books. And then we open it and it's not books at all. We all tend to think we know what there is, but then maybe you don't realize what's in there. Maybe you've forgotten what you put in there years ago, especially when you get to things like attics and garages. Don't assume that you know what's in there. Or if you pop the lid open and there's a couple of sweaters on top, don't assume that the whole bin is sweaters. It may not be. There may be other things stored underneath. So we grab everything out, sort it out into categories. Some people really struggle with the categories. How do I put like items together? So we just start thinking about, what is it? What's the function of it? I like to think in terms of shopping. If you go to a craft store, think about the different sections of the store that they have. There's florals and there's scrapbooking and there's, painting, different categories. Think about when you go into Home Depot, you're going to have your lawn and garden department. You have your building materials. You have your lighting, electric stuff. You've got, again, your painting stuff. So think about departments in a store, and that'll help you create categories as you're sorting. So then, next slide, once you have sorted everything and you've categorized it, now it's time to purge. Purging, that is probably the toughest part for most people. Making decisions about what stays and what goes are really important. So you want to get rid of anything that is broken, stained, ripped, anything that you haven't used for a while. In master closets, we like to say if you haven't worn it in 12 calendar months, you probably don't need it. Now, the exception to that might be the suit that you only wear to funerals, right? Maybe you haven't had a funeral in the last year and it was an expensive suit. That may be something that you hold on to. But otherwise, if you haven't worn it in a year, get rid of it. If you don't even remember that you owned it, you could probably let it go. If you haven't looked for it and you didn't even know you had it, it's time. Next slide. I love this quote. It says, I spent the first 2/3 of my life acquiring stuff that doesn't matter, only so I can spend my last third getting rid of it. What a stupid game of consumerism we Americans play. And I would say that is so true. I think a lot of people, when they get to that last third of their life, they start to realize how stupid it really was to just acquire and acquire and acquire. It really wastes a lot of money and a lot of time that could have been spent on other things. And then you have to spend all this time going through everything that you've just acquired. Next slide. So the first thing I would say when you're thinking of purging is detach emotionally. The emotional attachment is what keeps us with all of this stuff in our homes. Clutter is postponed decisions. That's a quote from Barbara Hemphill. I love her. When you aren't sure what to do with something and you set it down, and then you don't know what to do with something else and you set that down, it goes off and makes clutter babies. And the next thing you know, you open your closet and the whole thing's full, right? So don't do what I call stash and dash, which is where I don't know what to do with it, so I'm just going to stash it somewhere. Don't do that. Start to detach emotionally. The reality is it doesn't matter how much you paid for something back in the day. That is irrelevant. That is already spent money. So what you need to worry about now is, do I need it, love it, use it, want it? There's a whole list of questions that I use with clients to help them determine whether they need something or not. One example that I use is, let's say you're going to Florida for 3 months and you're driving to Florida for 3 months. What would you put in the car to take to Florida? That's probably the items that you actually need, right? There's a huge difference between a need and a want. And I'm not saying that every person needs to live such a stripped down, minimal life that they can't enjoy their life and have things that they want. But I think it's important to start with, what do you need first? Then worry about what you actually want. So think about clothing. If you are one of those, and it happens a lot, no judgment, but if you're one of those that when your kids moved out, all of a sudden your clothes expanded into every single closet of your house, it happens. I want you to think about, how many clothes do you actually need? So if you do laundry, say once a week, theoretically, you only need 7 pairs of underwear, up to 7 pairs of socks, 7 pants, and 7 shirts. Theoretically, right? And you're looking, I can see your faces. You're looking at me like, lady, you are out of your mind. Remember, this is what we're starting with. This is the basis, okay? So then you have to think about things like seasons. Okay, so maybe you need a few long sleeve and a few short sleeves. So now you're getting more than 7, right? You can see how this is going to add on. Then maybe you have dressier occasions and more casual occasions. So I'm not suggesting that you only need 7 outfits, but when you really think about life and how many items you actually need, it's probably a lot less than what you actually have in your house. So start with what you need and start purging. Start making decisions about what can go and what can stay. A few people have struggled with things like, but I'm going to fix that. I know it's broken, ripped, or has a stain on it, but I can get the stain out, or I can fix that, or I can have somebody alter these pants that I've had for 20 years and have never been the right length. So if that's the case and you have good intentions, I would say set a timeline for yourself. Give yourself a month 2 months, a week, 6 months, whatever it is. And if you haven't fixed that problem by that point, let it go. Or if you have things that you're like, I think I want to get rid of it, but I'm not really sure. It's kind of a maybe item. Put that in a bin, put a label on the side that says, on this certain date, maybe 6 months from now, get rid of this. Don't open it. Right? Because sometimes if you open it again or you touch it again, you think you need it. There's actually, I forget if the exact name for it, but there's a name for that. If you touch an item, it actually generates an emotional reaction in you. So if you struggle with that, don't touch the stuff. Just open, just put the label on the bin and get rid of it in 6 months. So take the time to acknowledge the past, acknowledge what, and if you've seen Marie Kondo, she thanks items before they donate them. I don't know if I encourage people to talk to their stuff so much, but you can at least acknowledge that that item has served you well and then let it go. Just because it was useful to you in the past, or you loved it in the past, or someone else loved it in the past, does not mean that you have to keep it for the future. So when you're decluttering, you've got to detach emotionally and think forward thinking. Think about the future. Is this item going to be useful and lovely and wonderful and make me happy going forward in the future? Or am I keeping it because I'm stuck in the past? Next slide. So once you've sorted and categorized, and then you've purged the stuff that you no longer want, now is the time that you pick a home for it. A home for everything and everything in its place, if you've heard that phrase. This is when you decide which shelf is for which type of items, and you're taking those categories and you're finding a home. Where am I going to store the bathroom towels, right? You probably want to store them in the bathroom or near the bathroom so that you can hop out of the shower and grab a towel. Things like in the kitchen, you want to store your hot pads next to the stove so that when you open the stove, you've got a hot pad within arm's reach. So we really think about where are you using the item? You want things to be within your sphere of use, especially if you have mobility issues. If you have trouble, you don't want to be climbing on ladder to get up to stuff. You may not be able to crawl on the floor to get to the lowest shelf. So we say from your knees to right above your head, that is your zone. That anything you use on a daily basis that you need access to, you need to store it in that zone. And if you're sitting in a chair, like in an office setting, make sure that anything you would need on a daily basis is within arm's reach. And then things that you want to get to maybe weekly or monthly, maybe those you have to get up and walk across the room or stoop down low to get it out. But the stuff that you use all the time should be easily within reach. We do have a question. I'd love to answer a question. How do you start a declutter conversation with a loved one? That is a fantastic question. I'm assuming that's a situation, I guess I don't know the background there. I'm going to assume that maybe you're thinking that person's home is more cluttered than it should be, or maybe you're thinking that they might need to move into some kind of different living arrangement in the future. I would say that's a very difficult, it could be a difficult conversation. I would say the tips I would give you would be go into it with an open heart and a positive attitude and empower that person. It's not about you and what you want if you're approaching someone else about their stuff. People's stuff and people's spaces are very personal. So you want to go in with no judgment at all and be willing to respect their wishes. If you approach somebody about decluttering and they are just adamant that they do not have a problem, they don't want to fix it, and they want you to leave them alone and mind your own business, do it. That's what I would say. Until someone is ready, you cannot force them to do anything. So we run into that a lot. We get calls and people say, I think my aunt is a hoarder. And I'm like, okay, have your aunt call me, because you calling me isn't going to do anything if your aunt has no desire to get organized. So make sure that the person themselves wants that. Okay, so a home for everything, everything in its place. One thing we love to do is name spaces. For example, next slide. A junk drawer, right? If you don't know where something belongs, it belongs in this drawer. That's what junk rooms and junk attics and junk basements end up being is, again, I didn't know what to do with it, so I stuck it here. And then all of a sudden you've got a big room full of junk. So for example, we had a client who had a space that had a bunch of stuff in it. I won't call it junk. I don't like using the word junk, but that's the typical name for the junk drawer. She had a room that was just cluttered with all kinds of different things. The reason why is because that room didn't have a purpose. They had not named it. It was just an extra room. And so because the room had no purpose and it had no name, it just accumulated anything that didn't have a purpose and didn't have a home. So we encourage you to name. I like to use the term utility drawer because I would bet money that your junk drawer looks a lot like my utility drawer. It has certain things in there that we all have in there, maybe a few tools, some rubber bands, paper clips. It may have scissors in there. It could have super glue, lots of different things that I would say are actually utility things. And if you organize the drawer, call it a utility drawer, make places for each type of item, all of a sudden junk isn't going to collect in there anymore. And you can make a home for random screws and things that fell off of furniture that you're not sure where they go. That's fine, but just give it a home and give it a name. And that way you'll know where to put the next screw that falls off of your furniture. You'll have a home for it. So location, location, location. Again, you want to make sure it's near where you use it. And then also think about visitors to your home. And I'm not talking about people. I'm talking about stuff that lives temporarily in your home. Library books, things that need to be returned that were borrowed, items that need to get returned to the store that you purchased and decided that you didn't need anymore. If you don't create homes for visitors, those items tend to junk up your kitchen counters, your kitchen table, your laundry room, bedroom, places like that. So assign a home and create a purpose for every drawer, every cabinet, and every space. And then keep the items to that category of whatever you named it. So if you have a coffee mug space in your kitchen, only put coffee mugs there. Put your other drinkware elsewhere. Next slide. So once you have sorted and categorized, you've purged the stuff that you no longer need, you've created a home for things, now it's time for containers. And we are on number 6 if you're keeping track, right? A lot of people they think, I'm going to get organized. What is the first thing they do? They run to the store and buy a container. Buying containers does not make you organized, okay? So if you take stuff and you just chuck it into a container, you are just as disorganized as you were before. Your house might look better, but you are just as disorganized as you were before. So don't buy containers first. I recommend that you look at how frequently are you going to be getting into the container, because you may want a container with an open lid. Humans are inherently lazy. If you have to open a lid to put something away, chances are you're going to lay it on top, right? That's the nature of humans. So you want to think about your containers. If you need to keep dust and dirt out, say in a garage or an attic, you might want a lid on it. If you're wanting to stack containers, you would want a lid on it. If it's like medicine in your kitchen cabinet that you get into every single day, you want to have an open top so that there's no hindrance in putting things where they belong. That gives me an example of people ask all the time, should I keep my medicine in the kitchen? Should I keep it in the master bedroom? And my answer is, where do you take your medicine? And that will determine where you should store your medicine. If it's in the kitchen, great. Again, make a home for it and then get a container to put it in. I love using containers inside drawers and cabinets because it keeps things contained, hence the name. You can grab the container out, get out what you need out of the container and put it back up in the cabinet. And that helps a lot in pantries, kitchen cabinets where they're way up high, or there's super deep cabinets. It helps keep things organized in those cabinets. If you reach into your spices or your sauces cabinet area, and you're going to end up knocking over bottles to try to get to the stuff in the back. So we put things in a little container. So you, again, pull it out, get out what you need, put it back in.
Amy,
right.
we have a question related to storage containers. Do you mind taking that?
Sure. All right.
Suggestions on what to do with the boxes and boxes of photo albums and loose photos that have been passed down to you from family members. Any tips?
Actually, we are going to talk about photos a little bit later on. So I'm going to put a pin in that topic for just a minute, and we'll get back to that. Okay. So next slide. Once you have assigned a home and you've found the right container, that's the other thing, is until you've purged things, you have no idea what size of container you're going to need. Okay. So you're going to assign a home and then pick the container. And then I encourage you to label it. People say, oh, I know what's in there. Okay, that's great. What about when your memory starts to fade? What about when caregivers come over? What about when somebody else is trying to help you find something? Labels are essential. You want to think about putting large fonts. The examples I have in the picture are not that large. You want to think about a little bit larger fonts that can be read from a standing or a sitting position. Again, so you're not having to bend way over to try to read things or climb up high to read things. You want to make sure you can read the label from a regular standing or sitting position. And just make sure that you label everything. I mean, personally, we love to label inside of cabinets, inside of drawers. We put the labels just on the inside where you can't see it from the outside of the cabinet. And that way we remember, it helps you remember what belongs there so that when you're putting things away, they get put back in the right spot. I don't know if any of you have seen like a pegboard. My grandfather did this where he would outline his wrenches on the pegboard. That's maybe a little bit extreme organization. I'm not necessarily suggesting it, but the idea is the same. Once you've picked a home, that label helps you understand where it goes back to again. So that way you can put things away. Next slide. Then the key to all organization is to maintain. In order to maintain your organization, again, you need to have positive habits and routines. The habits of putting away things when you're done using them. Once you've gotten that dining room table cleared off, maybe you had piles of things before, the routine of every night before you go to bed, the table is clear. Or once a week, you get your whole house picked up so that your cleaning lady can come. Or inviting people over once a week so that you want to maintain your spaces. Whatever it is for you that works, it's great to have good habits and routines. And creating a workflow for routine tasks. One thing that I find too with maintaining my spaces is it helps to understand how long it's going to take for you to do a particular task. So if you time how long it takes you to do it when you do it one time, that helps you mentally not think, oh, I don't have time to do that right now. I don't have time to file my paperwork. Well, if you take like a week's worth of mail and you go to do your filing, time it, see how long it takes you. You might be surprised. Maybe it only takes you 3 minutes. And in your mind, it was like a 2-hour process. So that's one of my big keys of making sure you know how long it takes to do something, because the thought of doing it sometimes is way more overwhelming than actually getting it done. All right, we have another question.
Looks like yeah, do you mind taking that really quickly?
Sure.
All right, what's the best way to store chip bags? Mine are always falling and getting crushed or smashed. Great practical question.
Yes, that's a great question. So it totally depends on what your kitchen and your pantry look like, but a couple of different situations we've done. Some of our clients have the big wide drawers in their kitchen instead of cabinets. We love putting chips in a drawer. I think that's a great way to keep them from getting smashed and intermingled. And then other places, we put them in a bin. I know in my pantry, we've got one of those closet pantries that's pretty deep. So we put our chips in a basket or a bin that has, again, an open top. because sometimes when we buy chips, we might buy a few too many so we can pile them on top of the basket. And then we use chip clips to keep them closed and try not to buy more than we actually need. But I love using a basket or a bin to contain the chips, or if you're in a really nice kitchen and you've got those big, nice drawers, that's a great place to put them too. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So far we have found purpose, we have created a plan, we've sorted and categorized, we've purged the items we no longer need, assigned a home, found the right container to put it in, labeled that container, maintained our systems, and now this is a step that a lot of people forget. Celebrate. Celebrate what you've done. If you have set goals for yourself or you're trying to accomplish a whole house declutter, don't forget to celebrate when you've actually accomplished something. For you, this process may be one drawer at a time. You go through the 10 steps, one drawer at a time, or one room at a time, or one closet at a time. But what I hear people say all the time is, oh, well, I have so much more to do. And I'm like, yeah, you might have so much more to do, but you need to celebrate what you've accomplished. If you start organizing and you've accomplished something, taking a before and after picture helps motivate you. It helps you realize how much you've accomplished, how far you've come, and then you're able to take that accomplishment and move forward and get the next project done, get the next drawer done, get the next room done. So don't forget to recognize what you've done, what you've accomplished, and celebrate that. Even if sometimes we just do a quick little happy dance. Woo, we got that cabinet clean. Yay. Or we got our project done for today. Woohoo, high fives around the room, right? Take time to celebrate. And then the last step number 10, is reevaluate. If you have put a system in place and you have followed all these steps and you have maintained your system and it's still not working for you, go to plan B, go to plan C, go to plan Z, right? There's always the next system. But if you have implemented a system and you have not maintained it, that is not the system that's broke. That's your habits and routines and your maintenance that's broke. Okay. So if your system is not working, don't be afraid to try a different system. Maintenance is absolutely key, or all systems will fail. And then when your circumstances change, maybe you do end up moving into a smaller space, you're going to need to readjust. You're going to need to reevaluate and try to decide, what do I need to do differently in this space? I know for me, my house can be perfectly organized, but if I move, all of my bins may not fit in the exact places that they did in my old house, because every house has different size closets, different amounts of drawers, different amounts of shelves, etc. So don't feel like an organization failure if what you tried the first time didn't work. Try the next thing. First, give it an actual college try, right? Work on it and try to maintain it. And then if it doesn't work, try something different. So that is the 10-step process that you can use to organize anything. All right, now we're going to talk about some tough issues. Next slide. All right, there you go. 3 Ds. These are 3 things that are really difficult for people when they go through these issues. So when a death of a loved one, okay, it's hard enough. You're trying to grieve, you're trying to deal with everything that's going on emotionally with this person passing away. Then you have their stuff to deal with on top of that, okay? These are really tough things to deal with. So I would say focus first on grieving, and don't let anyone else tell you when you should get rid of the stuff. That's really a personal opinion. I've met people who the day after the funeral are cleaning out the closet. And then I've met people that 10 years later, they're like, okay, I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready to finally go through their stuff. These can be really hard. And I would suggest with any of these 3 Ds that you ask for help. Have somebody that can be a support for you, whether that's a professional or a friend or a family member. Have somebody there that can help you as you're going through these processes of decluttering after these situations or during these situations, because it can be emotionally challenging, and you may need somebody there as like your cheerleader and your support, and to help keep you accountable as you're going through the process. Divorce, again, there's the grief, the loss that happens there as well. And then you're dealing with dividing items out, right? Who gets the toaster, who gets the crock pot, who gets the mower, all these things it's a challenge for organization. And then disability, when you start to get, you've suffered an accident, or you've had a surgery, or you have degenerative diseases, chronic illness, that you begin to have physical limitations, that becomes an issue. You're not able to crawl up in the attic anymore. You're not able to lift a heavy bin anymore. So you may need somebody there to help support you through that process. Next slide. Paperwork, that's another issue, especially if it's gone out of control for a really long time. This can be a very difficult thing to go through. So this may be where you want additional help, or talk to your accountant about it, or ask a professional for help. It's important that you can scan or copy important documents, and then make sure the originals are stored in a fireproof safe, preferably offsite, so that if you had a fire, flood, or whatever, you would not lose those important documents. Make sure you set up a trusted contact person, a power of attorney, or an executor for your estate, and make sure they know where your information is. Again, the more organized you are with your paperwork, the easier it's going to be for the executor of your estate to go through and get everything handled. So keep a binder or a file with all of your financial accounts and life insurance policies and things all in one place. Now, I'm not saying put your passwords in there. That's not what I mean. But keep that information in one place, so you have like a in case I die binder. And that sounds morbid, but it is super duper helpful if something happens to you. Doesn't matter what age you are. Tell your trusted contact where they can find the important documents and the account information, whether that's stored on an app, in a flash drive, safety deposit box, fireproof safe, wherever that is. Make sure someone can get into your phone. On social media, you can designate someone that if something happens to you, they would actually get control over your social media accounts. These are all things that are super important to think about way ahead of time. You don't want to leave your family members in a lurch. Financials, work with a financial advisor. Consolidate your accounts. I meet a lot of seniors that just over the years, they have opened different accounts for different things. And all of a sudden they're like, it's hard for them to even keep track of what accounts you have. I recommend simplifying, downsizing your accounts to where you have a central place that you're going to, maybe one or two different banks, not 5 or 6 different ones. So everything gets easier to keep track of and to manage. Next slide. Now we're going to talk about photos for the person who had a question about photos earlier on. What we recommend with boxes and boxes of photo albums and loose photos passed down by family, if you do not know who the person is in the photos and you have no recollection of them and you have no one to tell you who they are, get rid of it. I mean, there's really no reason to keep it. It's no different than Googling a photo of a random stranger, right? If you don't know who it is, let it go. If you do know who it is, or you do want to keep some of that information, we highly recommend scanning and digitizing your photos, your old media, like your VHS tapes, your 8mm film, and your memorabilia, documents, newspaper articles, certificates, plaques, anything that you can digitize and then declutter is fantastic. When we're digitizing for our clients, we recommend that they keep a physical copy, a digital copy on their computer, and then a digital copy in the cloud. So that you always have, to me, I'm super sentimental. Photos are really important to me. I want to make sure that we are not losing that information. So you want to make sure you keep one on maybe an external hard drive, but external hard drives fail eventually. So you want to make sure you have multiple copies of those things. And then enjoy it. There's no point in having boxes and boxes of family albums and loose photos if no one ever looks at it, right? What's the point of the scrapbook that you spent 100 hours making if nobody ever picks it up and looks at it again? So you want to think about what's the purpose of the photos I'm keeping, just like this 10-step process again, right? What's the purpose of what I'm keeping? Am I keeping it because I'm going to hang it on the wall again? Or am I keeping it because I want to share it on social media? Am I keeping it because I want to flip through the photo album? Like, what exactly, how are you wanting to enjoy the photos? And that will help you determine which ones to keep and what to do with them. We do recommend that you get rid of all negatives because photos can be scanned in again. You don't want to have to look through all your negatives. Some people scan their negatives. Personally, I feel like just scan the photos in and don't worry about the negatives. Get rid of anything that's blurry, anything again that you don't even know what it's a picture of. Get rid of that. If you have 5 or 30 pictures that are nearly identical, pick out the 1 or 2 that look good, that are the best. Get rid of all the rest of them. I give you permission. I, Amy Payne, give you permission to throw away photos. People freak out about throwing away photos, but it's really okay. If it's blurry, if it's the 25th one of a family gathering, like the group of people, it's like everyone's face looks different. Pick the best possible one. You can throw away the rest of them. And throwing it away is probably the easiest thing that you can do. If you have framed family photos, I want you to really consider, are you going to hang that frame on the wall again? If that frame is ugly or broken or you just don't want it, take the photo out of the frame, scan the photo in, get rid of the frame. That alone will save you a lot of storage space. And then if you organize those photos into photo boxes, you can have the little black photo boxes that stack nicely, look good on a shelf. Everything's organized and it's not just a big pile and a big mess. So when you're organizing photos, you can think about, do you want to organize it by chronological, or do you want to organize it by like what family, the people that appear in the photos, or do you want to organize it by like event? Some people will take their vacation photos and sort those out separate and then try to have like birthday parties and picnics and sporting events and all of that kind of in chronological order. It's really a personal preference how you organize it. But again, if you're ever going to enjoy the photos, try to get them organized, whether that's physical or digital. And I do recommend that you enjoy your photos. So what's the point of having them if you're not going to enjoy it? Just like the fine china and the fancy tablecloths, if you're going to keep it, please enjoy it. Have your Sunday breakfast on it. I mean, it doesn't have to be a special occasion. If you're going to keep the china, use it. If you're not going to use it, what's the point of keeping it? I also run into people who have like, oh, well, these are my good towels, but I don't use those. Why? Treat yourself. It's your life. You only get one life. You never know when any one of us is going to get hit by a bus. Enjoy the china. Enjoy the nice sheets. Enjoy the fancy towels. Don't wait to live life later on. If you own it, use it. And if you don't use it, let it go. Let somebody else utilize it. All right, I'm off of that soapbox. Next slide. Sentimental items. Oh, this is really tough for people, especially seniors that are decluttering and downsizing. It's hard for people to understand that the younger generations do not want their stuff. And I know it's been probably beat into your heads in articles online and everything that the younger generations don't want the antiques. They don't want the collectibles. So you have to understand supply and demand. The value that an item has to you is irrelevant how much money you spent on it, right? Or how much money you spent on it is irrelevant to what it's going to sell for today. It's all about supply and demand. Hummel figurines, precious moments, they call those items collectibles, Beanie Babies. They call them collectibles, but they were mass produced. When something is mass produced, the higher quantity that there is on the market and the less demand there is, the lower the price. So you can't expect to get a high value or to be able to sell things for a large amount of money. So if you think that you have something that actually does have value, I recommend that you go to like an auction company or valuation service, that they will be able to tell you if that is worth money. Don't hold on to it thinking it's worth something when it's really worth nothing. So a lot of people think that those things are worth a lot of money. All right, next slide. Family members and expectations. This is a really, really tough situation. So do not expect family members to keep all of your stuff. You need to give them permission to keep only what they want, just like I'm giving you permission to keep only what you want. If you inherited, say, your mother's collection of something that she absolutely adored, you don't love her any less if you get rid of that collection. It's okay to get rid of it. Or if there were 40 teacups, for example, keep one. Keep a photo of you and her having a tea party with one teacup instead of feeling like you have to keep all 40. So when you're ready to get rid of things, you need to lower your expectations for your family members about what they should keep of your stuff. Okay. And then think about the expectations of your family members. Let's say you have adult children and they live out of town. They may not be able to take off of work to come help you declutter or downsize. So you may need to look into getting outside help. So just be careful what expectations you place on your family members. Next slide. Organizing is a journey, not a destination. Okay, we don't get organized and then nothing ever needs to be done again. Okay, we buy stuff, we go places, things break. Organizing's a journey. So I want you to take one step today towards getting organized with purpose. Next slide. I want you to formulate an action plan. Based on what we talked about today, I want you to think in your head, what's your one area that you're going to work on? And what are those 10 steps that you're going to go through in that area? Next slide. And I want you to think about setting goals. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Okay. So you want to think about breaking that project down into small bite-sized pieces and then set a goal for yourself. Like maybe you want to have the top of your table cleaned off by Friday, or maybe you want to have the spare bedroom cleaned out by the 4th of July because somebody's coming into town to visit you. Break those big projects into small bite-sized pieces. Give yourself a timeline, give yourself a deadline, and work towards it. And then if you struggle with this, ask a friend to hold you accountable. Maybe they have an area or a goal that they have as well, and you can hold each other accountable. Next slide. And if the whole thing still feels super overwhelming, what we try to have our clients do when you think about a whole house project is break it down into what are the top 3 things that you need to get done. Even if that's not going to address the whole clutter issue, it will at least get you started. You can start with one thing and then move to number 2 and then move to number 3. And staying on track where you're finishing number 1 before you go to number 2, finishing number 2 before you go to number 3 will help you get this project done. Next slide. All right. I appreciate your time today. I'm open to any other questions with the time that we have left.
Thank you, Amy. That was impressive. That's an impressive set of information and guidance. So I really do appreciate that. You got my gears moving right now. I'm trying to think where I need to start working on already. So I appreciate that. Dan and Mel in production, do we have any other questions? We don't, then okay, we have one question. Dan, do you mind throwing that up? Just a moment. Or maybe we don't have a question. Okay, one person has brain and stress issues. How do we approach if we are struggling with overwhelming stress or any mental issues that we might come into?
I think that's definitely where you want to have that plan and break that plan down into bite-sized pieces. I mean, different people that struggle with stress or brain issues, again, you may have a better time of day that you're able to tackle decision making more than
Mm.
another one. So you want to plan your day around how can you maximize the time that you have available, and then do figure out where your limit is. Some people may be limited by 10 minutes. They can only handle working on this for 10 minutes at a time. Or maybe they can only do 3 hours in a day or one day in a week. Each person will have to know their own limits. But if you break down this project into bite-sized small chunks of what you can do, then that will help manage the stress that goes along with it. And then, of course, getting support. Getting support is going to be key as well, to make sure that you can manage your stress and get help with the process. So you're not doing it alone.
Love that. All right, looks like we have a couple more questions.
Okay.
Throw those up on the screen if we have them. Will this presentation be archived for future viewing? Yes, it will, actually. You can go to the video section on our Facebook page. So I plan to go back and rewatch this and take notes. So yeah, it will live on our Facebook page and our YouTube page. All right, next question. Oh, okay. Looks like that's it. If we don't have any other questions, feel free to reach out to Amy about today's content. We have her email right here. If you're interested in just learning more about her services in, just decluttering and getting organized and living in, with some more peace and freedom, as we talked about earlier. I want to remind folks that if you'd like more information about AARP Indiana and potentially volunteering with us, you can contact us at our email address. Thank you so much for throwing that up. And if you enjoyed today's program, as I just mentioned, you can check out the other Longevity at Home virtual event recordings in our video section on our Facebook page, as well as our YouTube page. So I want to thank everyone again for taking the time to tune in, and we will talk to you later. Thanks.
Thank you.